It was some years ago that I began writing my book on Nikola Tesla and Mark Twain, available as Tesla and Twain in paperback and ebook. I was fascinated with Nikola Tesla, who at that time of writing my book was not as well known as he is today. He had been at that time kind of erased from the history books. He was not recognised on the academic or historical scene, but he was noted in the alternative history scene, and I've always been quite alternative and normally follow the alternative trends. So as I was saying, I've been fascinated by Tesla from a young age, but that was because I'd been fascinated by time. What is time? Why is there time? And such like. And I've been interested in time travel, which is how I came to discover Nikola Tesla. So he's not known for building a time machine as such, but his patents for all his various instruments and devices that he created were used for such things as the Philadelphia experiment, for those that know about it. It's even been suggested that he was involved in this Philadelphia experiment, which happened in 1947, also known as Project Rainbow. And this is about a United States Army experiment to make one of their ships invisible, but actually resulted in the ship being transported to another place where it stayed for a few minutes and then returned back to its original setting, with the crew all disorientated mentally and physically, and some of the crew were actually embedded in the ship's hull. This experiment, or this, because they were trying to make it invisible, not time travel, but when scientists do experiments, strange results occur. But this experiment had involved giant Tesla coils, and it is, like I say, suggested, even reported in some instances, that Tesla was there himself. Now, Mark Twain I've been reading since a youngster, though not his well-known books. I liked his Connecticut, Yankee and New York, which some say that Twain's protagonist in this book was based on Tesla. And I also like Twain's theological books, such as the Diaries of Adam and Eve. So Nikola Tesla and Mark Twain were good friends. They met in the 1890s. They were often out playing on the social scene of New York City. Twain was the elder by 21 years. And both these men were showmen. They enjoyed the attention. Now, Twain was a member of a private society known as the Players Club, and this was a social club found by the actor Edwin Booth and was for artists, writers, actors and such like. And Twain introduced Tesla as a member. So I'm sure many of you know Mark Twain is not his real name. He is actually Samuel Langhorne Clemens, and he was born on November the 30th, 1835, and he died on April the 21st, 1910. And what's significant about both these dates? Well, Halley's Comet was passing over both times. So he was born on the day Halley's Comet passed over, and he also died on the day that Halley's Comet passed over. He was also the 6th of 7 children. So as Tesla and Twain were out and about, they were drinking buddies, attending the drinking clubs and going to men's clubs of their city, New York, going to all the happening parties, mixing with the in crowd. In fact, they were the in crowd. Everybody came to see these two. Everybody followed them around. They knew everybody. They were the socialites of the era. What I find interesting is that even though they were friends for a long time, Mark Twain, or Samuel Clemens as we know is his real name, only mentions Nikola Tesla once in his biography. And Clemens' biography is a 2-part series of very large books. Now, why is this? Well, I think it's because Nikola Tesla gave up alcohol after his encounter with Swami Vivekananda. And there is a well-known quote by Mark Twain that one should never trust a man who does not drink. Now, I've done a few shows on Swami Vivekananda. He came to America for the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, and then he went on to speak at many societies and lectures halls. And Tesla heard him speak, probably when the Swami came to New York City. Though there is also a rumour that he met the Swami at one of the parties given by the actress of the time, Sarah Bernhardt. Now, would the Swami be at a party being given by the famous actress? Probably, because she had just finished playing a role in a play which was an adaptation of the life of Buddha. So Swami Vivekananda would have been very interested in seeing that. Now, Tesla spent some time talking with Swami Vivekananda, and he was struck at how alike the Swami's theory on matter and energy were like his own theories in physics. His theories of physics in matter and energy and frequency. Swami Vivekananda wrote of Tesla in a letter, so he's writing about Tesla here. This is a quote now. Mr. Tesla was charmed to hear about the Vedantic prana and akasha and the kalpas, which, according to him, are the only theories modern science can entertain. Mr. Tesla thinks he can demonstrate that mathematically that force and matter are reducible to potential energy. I am to go see him next week to get this mathematical demonstration. End quote. So Tesla and Swami Vivekananda are having theological and scientific talks, but both coming to the same kind of realizations that matter, energy and frequency are what make the world go round. Now, Tesla and Twain were known to get into their share of trouble after a night at the Gentlemen's Club. And, as I said, Twain probably missed that side of his friendship when Tesla gave up drinking and could have ended up being why they didn't hang out so much together. Twain actually lived just a few blocks from Tesla's laboratory at 35 South 5th Avenue. That's where the laboratory was, 35 South 5th Avenue in New York. And Twain was known to visit Tesla's laboratory all the time. Tesla himself never owned his own flat. He lived all his life in hotels. He actually died in the New York City Hotel, the New Yorker, where many famous folks have lost their lives. His apartment was on the 33rd floor, and Tesla had an obsession with numbers, especially the number 3, and he always asked for rooms which the door number could be divisible by the number 3. I don't know if you're aware of this, but shortly after Tesla died on the 33rd floor of the New Yorker, the US government sent in a team to retrieve as much of Tesla's papers as possible, and that team was headed by a man called John Trump, who is the uncle to a certain Donald Trump. Now, Nikola Tesla was known for his electrical inventions, his scientific creativity, and being a rather eccentric man, but he was also a genius and had been toying, if that's the right word, inventing and experimenting with all kinds of systems that the government was very interested in. So this is probably why the government sent in a special team headed by John Trump. Now, Tesla was born in 1856 in the Austro-Hungarian Empire on the stroke of midnight, it is said, between the 9th and the 10th day of July. In the Julian calendar, that's the 28th of July. And there was a tremendous lightning storm going on, though I have since been told that there was always lightning storms going on in that area. But I find it interesting that it gets mentioned. I think it was, like I say, a tremendous lightning storm. And then when one thinks what he went on to deal with, electricity and lightning and light, which is quite, relates to, it's a parallel with lightning that comes from a storm. Now, Nikola had been a fragile boy, both in mind and body. His thoughts would often turn to unhappy ones of death. And it is quite weird that his father was planning that he would become an Orthodox priest. So this was the path that Nikolai was supposed to take. But throughout his younger life, as I say, he had these unhappy thoughts about death and faith and superstition. Nikolai and his family thought that he would become a priest, but they probably weren't aware of all the spiritual and paranormal phenomena that he was seeing going on around him all the time. Or maybe not all the time, but, was occurring. He wrote in his own biography of that time, "Suspicious beliefs were distracting me. I've lived in constant horror of evil spirits, of ghosts, of giant man-eaters, or of other satanic monsters of darkness, end quote. And this was all happening to him, or he was seeing all this before he was 8 years old. No wonder he was such a terrified kid with fragile health and body issues. But all this changed after his 8th birthday, when he suddenly became aware of light, nature, and books which helped distract him from his dark thoughts. He became aware of strange sensations happening to him, such as if a piece of camphor was brought near to him. He always developed a strange taste in his mouth, and his body was becoming super sensitive. The same thing happened to him at the sight of a pearl, which he used to see a lot of later on in his life in New York City, when women were wearing their pearl earrings and pearl necklaces. And of course pearls were often part of the food when they were having their oysters. So the same thing happened to him at the sight of a pearl, which always brought on these strange convulsions. And should a peach be brought before him, he would suddenly catch a fever. A peach, an innocent fruit. But I was wondering if this was a form of synesthesia, a not so rare phenomena in people. This is when one's sensory pathway is overridden by another sensory pathway. For example, when one can put a colour to perhaps a certain stimulus, they can put a colour to a sense of taste, or a colour to a sense of smell. This is an involuntary response to a stimulus. For example, the taste of metals in one's mouth when one sees the colour blue. These are just examples, but many people seem to suffer from this. What, do they suffer? Is it an extra sensory development they have with this synesthesia? Tesla was prone to attacks of hallucinations. He wrote about this, and this is a quote: "An appearance of images often accompanied by strong flashes of light," which takes me back to he was born during a tremendous lightning storm. And he's saying that many of these visions that he had, or as it said here, hallucinations, but were they hallucinations? We shall find out later. Always accompanied by strong flashes of light, as if like the lightning went and then the vision would come. And these hallucinations and appearances of images would seem very real to him. They were not just in his mind, but often developed into things before him. So it's like he was living, walking, being in these, what many people would think were hallucinations. But is he going off into other times, other dimensions? And he writes, and this is a quote: "These strong light flashes cover the scenes of real objects and simply replace my thoughts. These images of things and scenes have the character of reality." So, end quote. So it's like suddenly he's sitting in his room, let's say, he's in his hotel. There's a flash of light, and the hotel room that he's in suddenly gets covered over by other scenery, other situations. But some of these visions were of machines not yet invented. It's like he was being given the blueprints for the machines that he would go on to invent. By looking at these visions of machines, Tesla was able to see in them their entirety. He was able to see the machines from inside out. He was able to see the mechanics of how these machines worked. And he writes, and this is again a quote: "The moment when somebody designs an imaginary device, there is a problem of transfer from raw idea to the practice. That is why any discovery made this way has lack of details, and usually it is inferior. My method is different. When an idea appears, I immediately begin to elaborate on it with my imagination. I change its design, improving it. I switch on the device to begin its operation in my head. For me, it does not matter whether I test my invention in the laboratory or my mind. All my inventions are developed by this method, with no exception. I think there is hardly any scientific discovery that cannot be foreseen mathematically without visualization." End quote. So he's taken apart in his head the machines that he's being given as a vision, rebuilding them so he knows the inside and outside of this being, this invention, this device, and he knows how to make it work in his mind before he even starts building it in the laboratory. So Tesla did wonder if he had a very creative imagination. Some of the objects and visions come into him out of the blue. They were not something he had necessarily been considering. So he began to ponder on these occurrences and visions and the effect they were having on his mental processes. His conclusion was that he was some kind of, and I'm going to quote here, automaton of cosmic forces. Automaton of cosmic forces is pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? That he felt he was like being puppeteered. He was a puppet being puppeteered by some puppet master, or even like a robot who was being programmed, being given these visions and these thought forms. This is intriguing, since it was Nikola Tesla who created the first working automaton machines. And I mean the electrical ones. Obviously there were mechanical ones before that, but he created the first electric automaton. In 1898, he demonstrated these at the Chicago World Fair. He placed in the lake a model ship that seemed to move about the lake of its own accord, but the audience were unaware that Tesla was able to operate the ship by remote control. But we're just going to go back to these visions, which took him wholly out of this world into other worlds. You know, I was explaining about the lightning, flashes of lightning, and then suddenly he starts seeing other things. And this is a quote from his biography about these visions. Every night, and sometimes during the day when I was alone, I would start on my journeys, see new places, cities and countries, live there, meet people, make friendships and acquaintances, and however unbelievable, it is a fact that they were just as real and dear to me as those in actual life, and not one bit less intense in their manifestations. End quote. So what were these worlds and cities Tesla visited, and where were they? Was he being transported to other cities on, either planet Earth, or was he being taken off-world to alien realms, or perhaps even to other dimensions? I think it's a shame that Tesla does not clarify where he went or who he met, but that he did he's saying that these practices, when they were happening, were interfering with his daily work. He seems more annoyed about that. If that'd been me, I'd like to have kept a record of who I'd met, who these acquaintances were, these new places and cities and countries I was visiting. So, with practice and willpower, and Tesla talks about this in his biography, he learns how to overcome these sudden visions of objects and places. But, alas, he was unable to stop the flashing lights that often plagued him. Usually when they started, they were a warning sign that a new revelation or concept was coming. And I'm just going to give you another quote here from Tesla. These light phenomena sometimes still appear, especially when some new idea shows me unprecedented possibilities. But their intensity is relatively weak. End quote. So throughout his life, Tesla wondered where these thoughts and visions came from. He actually put forward the theory that the whole universe is alive, a conscious being that was able to communicate with everything in it. Tesla was a believer he's a believer that there was a creator behind the whole of the universe, and he believed that his own creativity was not his own. He says that all these ideas came from outside of him, that he was just a receptor to them. And he wrote, and this is a quote, "Once I had the feeling that my brain was enveloped in flames and a little sun shines in my head." End quote. That's crazy, isn't it? It's just, not crazy. It's like kind of mind-blowing in a way. He had little sun shines in his head. So his brain's enveloped in flames, and then the little sun appears as he begins to realise or formulate that device or apparatus he's developing. Now, Tesla did not believe in an afterlife, and he also said that electricity had nothing to do with electrons, which is a bit controversial. Though I'm beginning to go that way myself. I believe that electricity has nothing to do with electrons. But I should do a show on electricity another time. So I wanted to do a little bit about Nikola Tesla's chart. And I noticed that Mercury has a heavy influence on it. Though I think this may be from a Vedic point of view, a Vedic astrological point of view. Every planet but Jupiter is in a Mercury-ruled sign. When I gave this talk to the Astrological Lodge in London and was talking about this, they were saying it wasn't like that in the Western chart, so it must be the Vedic one that this is like. So every planet but Jupiter is in a Mercury-ruled sign. Every planet is connected to Mercury, except Jupiter. Well, actually, no, even Jupiter is. We also want to remember that the number 3, well, Tesla was very associated to the number 3. He did a lot of things in threes. He had some peculiar habits, such as walking around a building 3 times before entering it. And as I said before, he never owned his own home, living in hotels throughout his life. All the rooms had to be a number that was divisible by 3. So, if we looked at him today, he would have probably been diagnosed with some kind of OCD. Well, a few of them, as he was rather obsessed with cleanliness, much more so than the average person. Though, he did say that once he saw all the bacteria in his drinking water, and that made him aware and concerned of how many bugs and germs are out there in the world. So Tesla has his ascendant in Aries, and that means he's quite impetuous, which he was. Even though he was very youthful, he was also very naive. When he went to the USA, he was expecting to be recognised for his talent, when actually he was taken advantage of in the beginning there. Thomas Edison found it annoying that Tesla took it upon himself to improve the Edison system, where Tesla thought he was doing him a favour, he wasn't showing off his talent, he was just showing, look, this can be done in a better way. He was a bit naive that he should just go ahead and do things without asking people. He was quite unassuming, and he also had this perspective that life was to go forth and do what one should to help others. So he sort of did and said what he felt. He has a Mars ruled by Aries, which implies a bit of headlessness. He's a bit airy, but it also emphasises epiphanies and insight, which Tesla had, especially with his scientific work. So he was also the 11th house, which is friendship and associations and aspirations, was ruled by Uranus, but he has Neptune retrograde in it. He has a natal Uranus in Taurus in the 1st house, which is very apt, as Tesla is known for his experiments with electricity, wavelengths, frequency and vibration. It has been pointed out to me that with the first return of Uranus in Taurus, which was in Tesla's lifetime, there was a change in how we used energy, the Industrial Revolution being just, 100 years earlier. Tesla advocated for free and clean energy, and he also brought a new way of looking at our bodies as electromagnetic transmitters. Tesla was also very concerned about how we use the Earth's resources, and this Uranus influence that he has would have an impact on his becoming the forerunner as to how electricity was used. We must also remember that he often put himself forward to show how safe his system was. His demonstration involved him putting 500,000 volts of electricity through himself to demonstrate how safe this system was. We've got to remember this was a time when Edison was going around doing a travelling show to try and disprove Tesla's AC, alternative current energy transmission, because Edison was using the direct current, and Tesla, he was quite an innocent guy. He loved all his animals and such like, so he found it devastating when Edison, in his travel show to demonstrate how dangerous the alternating current of Tesla's system was electrocuting dogs. And then one big show, he actually electrocuted an elephant, which is just awful. Absolutely destroyed Tesla. He didn't want his electricity system being used for that. Now, Tesla also regarded the world in terms of frequency, energy, vibrations and resonance. He wrote, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency and vibration. And as I said, he was obsessed with numbers, and this may be the key to why he was obsessed with the number 3. You know, like I was saying, he walks around a building 3 times before he entered it. He would do 33 laps at the swimming pool, no more or no less. And there's the famous quote by him, "If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6 and 9, then you would have a key to the universe." Many people have tried to unravel this last quote and discover the key to which he means. Now, this is an interesting piece by Tesla. It was discovered just a few years ago, along with other works of his, in a chest. A chest that was for sale in the antique shops, and they obviously didn't realise how valuable the paperwork inside it was. But it does kind of look like an astrology chart, but I think it's to do with his putting together his idea of the matter, energy and frequency or vibrations and how the world works. But, you know, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this. Tesla's Chiron is in Aquarius, or Chiron as some people say. But anyway, his Chiron is how I say it. Though apparently retrograde, he could be regarded as having controversial ideas for those times. He was actually a man ahead of his time. He was also critical of society. You know, he was very critical of society. He thought it was run in a bit of a crazy way, and as I do, it's all a lunatic asylum. And, you know, this could well suggest why he cannot relate to people who think differently to him. His vision for the future was that automatons and robots would do all the manual work and humans would have more time to pursue worthy pursuits. But he had probably not envisioned that most people would use their free time to sit around and play games with their computers all day. As many of us know, Tesla was not very practical with money, and he also forgot to patent his own inventions, his excuse being that he was too busy to do so. So he was often involved in court cases trying to get back the royalties he was owed or fighting for the rights to his own inventions. Poor old Tesla, though I think the man, as many of us do, think of him as a genius. He was definitely a man before his time. And it's a shame he's still not around today to help decipher what electricity really is. Because I still think we misuse electricity and we don't understand what its potential is, or what it really is. But maybe he's out there in the ether trying to awaken us to what is our potentials. So, thank you for watching and listening. May Nikola Tesla never be forgotten, though his name is beginning to become more and more well known. And he's being depicted in more and more films, and I hear that there's quite a few biographies about him out there now. He is finally being recognised for the genius that he actually is.